mentioned Cosq. I'd be surprised if they look to get something early, but if it would be anything early, it would be something like the Vladimir.
Well, of course, we are now into picks and bans, so we're going to have to see what they're going to put the priority on. Elise already taken away, and Chaos Latin Gamers shutting down some of those high-pressure early junglers, and it makes a lot of sense. Kire, known for what he can do in the early game, and additionally, Talia, standard on the patch, Nar next to follow. So what do you think we're going to see the first pick priority on? You mentioned the Jhin. It's not always what the Fox wants to play, but we have seen that kind of utility focus coming from Zeitnot in their recent games.
Yeah, certainly. It's you also have things like the Echo still available from things like the bans as well. Looking at some of the other junglers, possibly Rek'Sai is something that we in Europe have seen a rise in popularity rather significantly. So whether or not teams want to try and prioritize something like the jungler will largely depend on what is left still to ban away. Because with the bans still available on each team, there's still quite a lot left open. Things like the Nidalee, even after the changes. Remember, this is 6.16, so she did experience a couple nerfs on 6.15, but a lot of junglers still saying, hey, she's still pretty valuable.
Still getting some of that damage back into the queue, even if you are losing that auto attack reset. So most junglers still saying the clear is still fine, but of course, as with most, highly mechanical junglers, got to be able to execute on it. A lot of focus going down into the top lane, the jungle pool as well, but Gangplank, Shen, Gnar all taken off the table. Of course, Gnar rising in popularity as a power pick, but we asked about the Nidalee, and there it is. KMV getting that for Julio Stito very early in the pick ban phase.
So it looks like KMV wanting to have that early game pressure because because you're running the Nidalee, you are going to have to be wary of the fact that she has very little crowd control. So if you want to actually set up a lot of ganks, you're going to need laners to help facilitate that. But with the Nidalee being taken away, as well as the Elise and the Rek'Sai being taken off the board too, you have to wonder whether or not, or what Dark Passage you're going to fall back on in terms of jungle priority, because you could go for something like the Olaf, but Gragas seems to be more on the priority list, and one of the big issues that Gragas has is his early wave clear cannot match up with Nidalee, and it's very easy for him to get bullied out. So it seems like KMV's whole pick and ban priority was very much about putting Dark Passage on something uncomfortable in the jungle.
Interesting to see, of course, with Gragas still up and available, may not be the best option for them overall, but 5 seconds left, and it looks like it will be the Echo and the Ashe locked in. Now the Ashe, of course, a relative power pick on this patch, great tool for initiation. And the Echo, without Gangplank, Shen, or Gnar on the table, he does feel like pretty top tier in terms of mid lane picks. Or in terms of top lane picks, rather.
Definitely. You can flex him down to the mid lane if you want to.
I think that might be... Well, actually, I don't know. I suppose maybe it is ambitious.
It very much depends on what is picked up, because it's not something that I would say is unbelievable that Cosq may pick up, but it's more likely going to be in the top lane given how many top laners have been picked away. The Ashe as well, something that we were a little bit surprised we didn't see more priority of earlier on in the day. Other than that one unfortunate game that happened earlier on with the Ashe did struggle up against the Jhin Tahm Kench lane. But other than that, it's something that hasn't really seen much popularity, largely because of how effective Tahm Kench is in the meta right now. And remember that he is still available on the board, which means that KMV could look to pick it up, but it looks like they've decided to switch things up.
Yeah, Alistar going to get locked in alongside the Kennen. Now, Kennen, long time considered that counter matchup to Gnar on the top side, but there's a lot to, we haven't seen too much of this patch internationally. I feel like there's still a lot of opportunity to kind of innovate, and wondering if this Kennen could go into the mid lane. It's been a long time since we've seen Kennen
mid lane Kennen. It's not especially efficient because he works better in longer lanes due to his skill set, and it's much easier to land the Qs if you put him in a longer lane. And in the mid, because it's a little bit awkward to actually set things up like that, it's just better overall if you can just put him in a side lane, especially if you can put a teleport on him too. So, but the Alistar into the Ashe. Typically fairly strong pick, low mobility, 80 carry. He can also act as a body blocker for the Ashe arrows because he has his ultimate to remove that crowd control, and it's quite easy to lock her down. So the Alistar, I can understand the pick. I do feel as though that the Tahm Kench would have been a stronger pick though, because of how effective it is against these Ashe arrows.
Interesting, of course, because not locking it on the side of KMV means that Dark Passage are going to get the opportunity to pick it up. Now, Gragas and Tahm Kench, the quick second rotation coming in here. And honestly, looking at these two comps, KMV, they have a lot of strong picks in terms of the Nidalee early jungle pressure. Kennen looking a little bit more like a comfort pick, but Dark Passage, this is standard 615 to the T. We've got the Gragas in the jungle, the Ashe, Tahm Kench bottom lane, Echo in the top. They're waiting on a multitude of mid laners to balance this out.
Yeah, they're holding on to their mid laner to the last pick. They want to make sure that KOSQ can have a lane that he can succeed on. But for Dark Passage, as you rightly said, they have a lot of pick potential. They have good engage. They have great disengage. You also have great setup on the side lanes because you have the Tahm Kench droning. You have the Ash Arrow to set up for the engagements on the sides. There are so many options right now for Dark Passage. They're picking a very well-rounded comp. They have reasonably strong laners, and the fact that this Ashe is going into a Kalista means that you're almost guaranteeing a very solid lane in the bottom already.
Interesting selections coming in. Malzahar, of course, one of the picks that did receive a bit of a knockdown on that passive, but still absolutely a threat now. Kennen for sure going into the top lane, but really the interesting pick coming in here is going to be that Kalista, backed up by the Alistar. It's been a long time since we've seen this bottom lane combo, but maybe we can say that because you're pretty much guaranteed to get those 2v2 lanes at 6:15, that a lot of the adjustments to Kalista we've seen in the past might not be as big.
Well, I mean, I still think there are better AD carries in the meta right now. If we just look at what's been banned, every other AD carry is available. You could pick up the Jhin, you could go Caitlyn that we've seen earlier on in the day.
You could go Sivir as well.
You could go Sivir, Tristana, especially if you are going for a teamfight composition and you want Engage, which is what the Kalista provides with the ultimate. A Sivir will do a perfectly good job as an alternative. She scales better, she has a better laning phase, especially into an Ashe. I feel as though there were better picks, but as you rightly said, it's more likely to be something comfortable. I'm excited to see how well it does. Personally, I'm not a fan of it, but perhaps KMV can prove me wrong.
Of course, final comps now locked in as the Cassio will go into the mid lane for Dark Passage. Overall, this is going to be an interesting game coming out because the Kalista lane, one that we haven't seen in so long, we have to wonder how these lanes are going to match up. Ashe, the potential to push early has always been a relatively big threat, but Chaos Latin Gamers already down a game in the group stage. Really need to find a win here in Dark Passage. Probably happy to start this one off, but you can see now some of these players we got to watch. Keep your eye on Elwind, one of the native players of this team. Absolutely a threat, known for sort of a solo carry style. Echo, you know, if he gets ahead, definitely can bring that to the table, but Blugo in the mid lane on this Malzahar. I mean, once again, I feel like both of these guys have excellent snowball-y picks that could potentially win them the game.
Quite excited to see this Echo into the Kennen matchup. Something that we haven't seen at all over in Europe. And even though we've seen Kennen in isolation, we've obviously seen a lot of Echo. The fact that we're going to be seeing these two match up against one another will certainly be exciting. Kennen very well known for being a lane bully, especially against melee matchups. So you can really push around this Echo. But once you get out of the laning phase in terms of what Echo can offer, it is a little bit more diverse. And if Kennen does fall behind at all during the early game, then he really does struggle to have any sort of impact in the middle of the lane because of how item reliant he is. So that top lane matchup will definitely be one that we need to keep our eyes on.
Well, exciting as it's going to seem, it looks like we are going to see the SKT Kalista coming out 6:16, a wonderful place. The SKT scans, and both teams leaving the base. Pretty standard setup so far. It doesn't look like anyone's looking for anything too crazy, but of course, if you're just joining us, KMV versus Dark Passage. KMV playing their first game earlier today, already dropping down to INTZ and Dark Passage. Two new players on the lineup, KOSQ and Kire. Pretty big question marks overall.
So in terms of the early game, we need to take into consideration what we could expect from the junglers. Because remember that when we were talking about the Nidalee pick early on during Champion Select, something that you always have to be mindful of is the fact that you don't have any hard crowd control, or you have no hard crowd control as a jungler. So very much reliant on your laners to set you up for success, and then you come in for the follow-up with the additional damage and anything that you can provide. So in terms of lanes that are great for him to actually gank, the bottom lane is a fantastic setup because the Alistar, you have the QW combo, and once you hit level 6 on the Kalista, you have the Fate's Call to set up for an engagement. Kennen has a lot of crowd control as well, and you have the Malzahar level 6 ultimate. So there are actually a lot of options for Nidalee and where she wants to gank. Her priority should really be in the top half of the map, though, and making sure that this Kennen's laning phase can snowball into success.
Yeah, we've seen exactly what can happen if Kennen is ever able to get a lead. You can see him giving the leash to Julio Stito right now. But really wondering if the pressure will go top. It has been pretty good for them overall in the past when they've been able to snowball that top lane. But as you mentioned, top lane being the focus, I feel like not only because we have a very potentially snowbally matchup, but looking at the bottom lane, you never really want to gank the Tahm Kench lane. Does not always feel good.
Yeah, and it's the fact that DP got an early push as well after getting themselves the Gromp is really going to hurt the Kalista Alistar lane. you always want to try and get that early shove as much as you can, because now what they're going to aim to do is try and deny as much farm as possible. And Element is going to be doing exactly the same on the top half. Because he has that range advantage, because he's playing on the cannon, he's just relying on his poke to just force that echo back and just do as much as he possibly can to try and deny farm. And it's very much about control, getting into the lane very early on, getting that early push, and not necessarily just shoving it under wave, but just slowly having it push in your favor means that you can posture up aggressively and just force your opponent away from that farm.
Yeah, looking to get those small advantages slowly, incrementally over time. Nothing major quite yet. Gonna have to wait for the junglers to do that. Kire, as well as Julio Stito, moving into the bottom side of their jungle, clearing out right now. Things not looking very good for Plugo in the mid lane, although does still have that pressure advantage. KOSQ doing his best to trade aggressively, but you're not really going to win a trade against that many Voidlings. You're going to just kind of have to respect the Malzahar here in the early game.
The thing about Casio is she's actually very good against Malzahar because of how well she can clear out those Voidlings early on. Remember that they stack up quickly based on how they attack the blueberry pie, and then every time you're hitting it up, and every time you kill a minion as well, you're spawning a new one and a new one and a new one. So if you kill the initial one, you can actually stop the spawning of the rest. And Casio is actually very good at that because you can just lay the poison down, use your Twing Fan to kill them very quickly, and then that stops his wave clear very efficiently early on, which just makes his life difficult. And this is how you'll see a lot of the early matchup, because Malzahar's wave clear early is actually really weak. He has to expend a lot of mana for very little base damages. He's very reliant on scaling. And so what you'll often see is KOSQ will have a lot of control over this lane. And it's often a good pick into the Malzahar because of how easy it is to break his passive as well. You can throw down the poison, one tick will be enough to remove it, and then you can just go as aggressive as you want. So KOSQ just taking full control of this lane. The thing that he has to be mindful of is this level 6 mark. Because once Plugo has that ultimate, it makes it for an easy setup gank in the mid lane when you have the Nidalee coming into the fight.
Yeah, of course, Nidalee with more than enough damage to back that up. Now shifting our attention to the top lane. L1 taking control as well. Right now, Dark Passage's laner is just doing incredibly well across the board. You saw a bit of aggression on the bottom side. Alistar going for that headbutt pull combo, but the reality of that bottom lane is that you're just not going to get past that Tahm Kench in terms of early damage. And it just seems an unfortunate set of circumstances for KMV right now, because a lot of potential for early aggression here, but nullified out by some of these lane matchups. And KOSQ in the mid lane, going back there, 19-36, the CS differential. We're only 5 minutes into the game.
Yep, and this is the nature of the matchup. Early push is the name of the game right now, and very impressively, even though Elwind was being harassed underneath his turret, he's actually done a fantastic job of maintaining the farm. He has decided to go back, changing up the build path a little bit. He went for an early corrupting potion. Sometimes what we'll see is the Dark Seal as well as the Doran's Ring, because it will give you a lot more sustain. But given as to how the matchup is going so well for Elwind, he's just decided, you know what, I'll pick up a second Doran's Ring, get that extra bit of damage rather than sustain, and increase my ability to trade back and forth with this cannon. And so far it's working out for him. It's going to help him a lot that Kennen actually hasn't had an opportunity to back yet. Likely he wants to work towards that Protobelt as soon as he can. He wants to go back on the 1200 gold so he can pick himself that Hextech revolver working into the Protobelt.
Yeah, of course, a little bit of additional burst there for the Kennen, and building towards that Protobelt, always a smart choice. Extra mobility on that ultimate, so crucial. But KOSQ now level 6, Plugo not quite so fortunate as he heads back to lane. We'll be getting it shortly, and this is when we need to start focusing our attention on the mid lane. Malzahar with the ultimate, Nidalee with the potential for backup, but at the same time, KOSQ, he's getting the opportunity to back here, and you can see 52 CS means easy tier pickup, grabbing pretty much everything that he wants on that first back to just make it easy to scale up on this Casio.
Yeah, something that you will often see is you get the early tier, you want to be stacking that up as soon as possible. The variation you'll see is whether or not KOSQ will go for a second Rod of Ages to stack up on the mana, or whether or not he'll go for an instant Rylai's. Typically, Rylai's, in my opinion, is the better option because you want to have that extra bit of utility to just stick to your targets. Your base damage is incredible, especially when you actually poison a target, which will dramatically help your ability to train lane. You can go in side lanes as well, and you're just going to make the Malzahar's life that much more difficult if you also have the Rylai's as well. And it just naturally increases your ability to trade in the 1 versus 1. So
across the board, it just seems like an excellent choice, but once again, keeping our focus here. Bottom lane still seems relatively balanced out. Bear and the Fox consistently getting pushed in, though. A lot of that due to a lot of aggression coming in for Rogu. No fear when he walks up for those tongue lashes. Knows that he's relatively safe to an all-in. Zeitnot, of course, hasn't had an opportunity to back either, so either bot lane, picking up their first set of items. Kalista itemization, I think we still have to assume Runaan's Blade of the Rune King, same as it's ever been, or do you think we might see something different here today?
You would imagine Blade of the Ruin King, Runaan's would be the priority. Sometimes if you are going for the Blade of the Ruin King build, you want to try and get it early on. But given the state of Blade of the Ruin King right now, it's not the most... there's no real optimal build path for Kalista right now, because you kind of want something that'll scale or well into the mid game. And while Blade of the Ruin King is pretty good in terms of a dueling sense, when you look at the lineup of DP, even if you have a Blade of the Ruin King, I can't see you winning in a 1v1 against any of those champions. Even a Tahm Kench, I think, has the potential to beat out just because of how ridiculous he is. And so I'm interested to see if he does change up his build path. Something that we saw from a few Kalistas a while back was actually the Hurricane into Infinity Edge. So you actually go for more of a scaling build path. But it wasn't something that caught on. It was usually just something that we saw in LCK and seemed to be there for a little while. But then all of a sudden the Blade of the Ring King build came back. What we could see is an early Ghostblade. That might be a shift that we have seen on champions like Twitch. Ghostblade into Runaan's Hurricane is something that's been very effective, but we'll have to keep our eyes on the Kalista and see how she shifts up, given that she is currently 66 farm. What I would like to see from the jungle right now is help them shove up this bottom wave, enable them to just get the push back towards their tower, and then they can go back to base, pick up their items. They'll be able to return to lane sooner, and then they won't actually lose that much because of how much harass the bottom lane of DP is putting down.
Looking for support on just those smaller advantages, not kills, nothing greater, just the opportunity to go back here to look for items, to maybe look to snowball into something bigger, but not given the opportunity quite yet. Of course, level 6 is coming across for every lane. Ashe, Arrow, the Fate's Call, everything available for these teams in terms of engage options, but both sides seem very content to just keep farming up. Now, if we continue to see passive game, who do you think has the advantage? Well, Kirei, maybe not so hot on the passive game. Going forward, Cask knocking him back. KOSQ is on the way in. Down goes a little bit of poison. Julio Stito running for his life. Alistair's looking for the way in. Tahm Kench delivering him to the backline. Flash over. There goes the petrifying gaze. First Blood. Bear moving forward. First Blood already dropping. Bear potentially in a tough spot here. Should have to ult soon. No holding on to that. Good patience coming in from the support there, but nice First Blood pickup for DP.
Yeah, great collapse down onto the Nidalee. Note that Kirei was expecting this play. He'd moved into the Dragon Pit, waiting for the Nidalee to overextend in the river. He came in from the flank. KOSQ was already moving down, and this is that jungle mid lane synergy that we were discussing earlier on. The play was already being set up by both players. They saw the opportunity to get the collapse down onto the Nidalee. They take advantage of it. They get themselves First Blood, and now they should be able to pick themselves up an Infernal Drake off the back of it.
And that's pretty much the perfect Drake to pick up in this scenario. Of course, Kirei relatively low, but the team is more than happy to back him up, and that Cassio sustained damage is insane, as it always has been. So not only the First Blood pickup, but additionally the first Drake. Of course, first tower still up and available, which could be a massive swing if KMV do get the opportunity to get it. However, not seeing an opportunity quite yet, and things continue to look pretty grim. A 30 CS differential in the mid lane, as well as Ashe starting to pull ahead. But here comes a fake call. Ashe gets swallowed up. Rogu potentially in trouble, knocking him back into the team. Tahm Kench being the focus. Nidalee on the way in. Ignite ticking down. Rogu finally going to use that thick skin. And Julio Stito trying to find a way into that back line. But Tahm Kench more than happy to just back out of that situation. This could be some pressure in favor of KMV, though.
So it looked like Julio Stito trying to pull back some of the deficits that his team has experienced in the early game, moving into the bottom half of the map to try and set up a collapse. We talked about how the engage setup in the bottom lane is actually very strong because you had the Kalista Fate's Call into the Alistair Headbutt Pulverize combo. But unfortunately for them, DP read the play. Rogu picking up Xenox very early on. The moment the Fate's Call came out, he was there protecting his AD carry. He was quickly able to retreat from a very sticky situation. And even though he had to force his flash himself, his AD carry still has both of his summoner spells. So overall, great setup, and now we are going to get to see that replay from earlier on. So note that Kirei was waiting for this opportunity because he noticed that Julio Stito was clearing out the pink ward. He set up the collapse from the back end. You have the Tahm Kench cutting off one escape. You also have the arrow cutting off another escape, and then KOSQ, he has to burn his flash to get the kill, but I think he's going to be pretty happy exchanging his trade for all that First Blood gold.
Oh, I mean, not only does he have the lead in terms of farm and individual laning, but we're going to have to hold that thought because Elwind is getting aggressive on the top side. Stun's coming in for Element, but he's going to have to flash to safety, and just across the board, DP are demolishing these lanes. Heliostito going to make it up here to maybe soak some farm, but it is not looking like an easy road for KMV.
A very early Merc treads into the double Doran's ring is actually making Element's life extremely difficult right now in the 1 versus 1. Very little that the cannon appears to be able to do, and even though he should really have the AP advantage, just the sustained damage coming out from this Echo is something that the cannon cannot deal with, and this was something that we were discussing earlier on. The cannon needs to get the early edge, and even though he accrued a pretty significant CS advantage, that has now been completely demolished because of the fact that Echo is now starting to scale up. He can now work towards his Trinity Force because he knows he can come out ahead in the 1 versus 1, and this is where you're going to start to see that cannon really fall off in the 1 versus 1 match.
Not where you want to be. Once Echo gets on top of you, he's just so sticky, so hard to get rid of. And KOSQ in the mid lane, it's a similar story for him. Malzahar may have that ultimate, but he's going to need some support from Heliostito if he wants to grab this kill. KOSQ starting to scale out of control. Abyssal Scepter backing him up compared to only the Lost Chapter and the double Doran's ring coming from Plugo. I mean, honestly, things look very grim in this early game, but despite all this conversation about the CS differentials, it's only about a 1k gold difference between these teams. Just that kill, just a bit of CS, and that Infernal Dragon as well. So KMV are definitely not out of the game, but they definitely want to start coordinating as a team. Kyrie goes in, Cask knocking him back, Element in trouble, does have the Proto Belt available, dashes, tries to make it to safety, gets the stun down, is ticking down. Who's going to get this one? Kyrie backs off. Quick donate to Elwin, but now there's a fight in the bottom side of the map. They're looking for a little bit more. Fox in trouble. He flashes, but that's not where he wants to go. Zeit not getting cut down. They're going to make it a trade back and forth, but in comes the TP. Elwind on the way down. Hungry for Bud. Heliostito in trouble. Tongue Lash maybe going to come out, but then Italy is too fast. Elwind has picked the wrong target and is now running up, realizing his mistake, an acquired taste. Is he going to get a bite? Doesn't look like it. The Catfish going for the cat, but Elwind going to grab it in the end. And Dark Passage running away with the game.
We talked about how that gold lead wasn't very big, but now it's snowballed to 2k as Dark Passage picked themselves up. All sorts of advantages all across the map. We have to start off by discussing what happened up in the top lane because Kyrie, he read the map well. He realized that Element did not have his flash. He was pushing the lane up. Elwind had the superior 1 versus 1, and all Kyrie needed to do was basically set Elwind up for success. So he comes in, he gets the flash body slam into the cask. That is more than enough damage to get themselves the kill, but KMV, they try to respond on the bottom half of the map. They know they have the numbers advantage, but this is where you're seeing the weakness of the Kalista. She thinks that with the very early Ghost Blade, she's able to trade back with the Ashe, but because of how well Tahm Kench can just buy time and reposition that AD carry, it results in a very, very poor situation for the AD carry of KMV. He ends up dropping. Nidalee has enough damage to be able to get the kill down onto the Ashe, but overall it just isn't enough because Dark Passage, they have the teleport on Elwind. He comes in from the flank. They use the Tahm Kench ultimate once again to cut off the escape, and now you've got an Echo with 2-0. You have an Ashe with 1-1-1, and then you've got KOSQ in the mid lane still sitting in his healthy advantage. So just DP, even though the gold lead isn't that big, it really doesn't represent how strong DP are over their opponents. Right?
Absolutely not, but it's still extending from 1k gold lead to a 2k gold lead, and DP looking very comfortable here. KMV consistently kind of getting the back end of these trades, don't seem to be making these proactive moves, instead just falling into the waiting hands of Kyrie, who has been all over the map in terms of aggression, but Elwind in trouble. Are just going to back off, throws down the parallel convergence, and walks his way out of that one. And I think the Gragas just proving to be a little bit stronger pick than the Nidalee in these exchanges because the Cask has been crucial in getting these early advantages.
The thing is, early on, the Nidalee just needed to be exerting more pressure across the map. We talked about how she had laners at level 6 where she could set herself up for success. There's very little that really DP could have done if Nidalee had just come into a lane, and the Gragas was there as well, and they could have just forced a fight. The Kalista, a little bit weaker in the 2 versus 2, but when you look at the mid lane, the Malzahar ultimate, the Kennen ultimate in the top lane too, there are just so many options for the Nidalee to set up, and he just didn't really take any of those opportunities. He waited far too late, and he was the one that ended up giving First Blood over to DP in the first place. So if your jungler, who's all about early pressure and early skirmishing, doesn't actually force any early pressure or early skirmishing, as something's going wrong and the communication is now bad, trying to force a play.
Rinse and repeat for the Tahm Kench. Every time the Alistair goes in, he just picks up the Ashe and walks her out. Now, big concern for KMV is the second Dragon spawn is that Infernal. Giving over to Infernals is going to make these scaling picks even more terrifying, especially in the case of the Cassio. Kyrie taking a bit of damage. A little bit of a 2v1 here. Infernal Drake backing up Heliostito in this case, but DP just going to start this one up. They take it, take a little bit of a leash for the Nidalee, and just looking to hopefully grab this. So Helios Tito is here. He might want to look for the steal, but Kire with the body block, and DP going to grab that one and walk away.
So right now, Infernal Drake going to go down. DP feeling pretty happy with the fact that they've gotten themselves a fair number of advantages.
Oh.
We see another fight.
Oh, the Fox, this is more than he wanted. Ash now delivered in. Fate's Call comes out, but he's only saving Bear. He cannot save himself. Catfish has got a taste for the cow. A little bit of beef for dinner here, and Kire on the way in as Bear is just going to get cut down. My God, DP at every corner are just finding an advantage.
DP doing some hunting down in the bottom lane. They pick themselves up 2 nice targets, and they're looking for more.
Oh, Julio Tito set to get cut down. KMV does so much damage. He turns back for the spear, but that may be his biggest mistake. 2 more Twin Fangs, and he closes it out. DP 7-1 in the kill score.
Continuing to push their advantages. We had a little bit of a slow moment at the 15-minute mark, but DP suddenly switching things on. They come in to the bottom lane, and the action still continues in the top.
Echoed, skipping out, dodging out, but is he going to look for the snapback here? Nope. Plays patient. Elements having to use that ultimate. Plugo goes in. This is what we wanted to see. Gonna get that kill. Plugo finally putting that all to good use.
Good roam coming out from Plugo, trying to get something back for KMV. Unfortunately, is it too little too late? As DP, as you mentioned earlier on, Sifa, sitting at 7-2 in the kill score, 4,000 in the gold. Things looking so positive right now for DP.
Not only 4,000 in the gold, additionally the double Infernal Drakes to back them up on the scaling Cassio, on this Ashe, who only has the pickaxe and the BF sword here. But we can watch this 2v2 one more time, and you can see exactly why the Tahm Kench is just so good.
So the setup itself is pretty promising, but initially, the Fox just takes so much damage. They're trying to provide peel for his AD carry, but he's just too little too late. Zeno just does way too much damage on this Ashe. This was the Ashe Kalista match that we were talking on. This is why I wasn't particularly a fan of it, because right now Kalista just isn't that strong in the meta, given against especially Ashe, who is considered extremely powerful in the meta right now.
And
Top
extremely
tier.
good against Kalista. The slows coming in from those arrows make it that much more difficult for Kalista to really do anything, and unfortunately I feel like KMV maybe have overestimated their ability in the spot lane. They picked a potentially strong duo, but not respecting the potential for counter picks to come in here.
I feel like we have to just go back to the draft, because this is where KMV had so many opportunities. They could have picked the Tahm Kench for themselves. They could have... it seemed like they had a plan, but there now...
He's in trouble, does have the Unbreakable Will, and is walking away. Doesn't stop KMV from throwing down a bit more damage, but maybe this is the opportunity to group for the team fight. Kennen is making his way up, and DP are very grouped. Element, though, does not want to take the risk here. Fate's Call available. Kire stepping forward. He's going to get ulted. They throw the Alistair into the back line. Tahm Kench can only save one. Bear, no ultimate. He knocks Sight back in, but no, he gets picked up by the Tahm Kench. Beautiful ult comes in from KMV. Kennen gets the ult down, but the stun from Echo onto 2 means a double kill in favor of DP, and no matter what KMV do, DP just seem to be one step ahead.
KMV tried to force a fight because they did not want to lose that mid-tier 1 turret, and DP respond in kind. So much damage coming out from this Cassio. She has the Morello completed. She doesn't need the Raleigh. She's just focusing on this damage-dealing build, and it is working out beautifully for the Cassio right now. DP, they're going to pick themselves up another turret. And I mean, that was just overall a great play. The problem that KMV is struggling with right now is that they just cannot match the itemization. Trinity Force is finished for the Echo. He got a great flank off, setting up for the nice stun. And when he's just sitting and beating down onto the KMV members, there is very little that you can do to turn that one around. And when we saw the Element ult come in, there just wasn't any damage. And this is just where, again, we have to backtrack to the draft. They had so many options available. Let's just see how this whole setup. So you can see Kire is the target, which is not really the guy you want to be forcing down, but it actually cuts him off away. Bear goes in for the engage, but there is no follow-up whatsoever. Ooh. If he'd gone in for that engage and then you have an immediate follow-up with the Malzahar ult, it's just... that would have been a better setup to get the kill down onto the Ashe. But unfortunately, there was no immediate follow-up. Rogu was able to provide support for Zaytnot, and then they were able to get out scot-free. So, yes, Kire ends up going down, but I think DP can be pretty happy with what they gained on the map.
And one of the biggest issues, too, of here is that there's just a lot of sustained damage on the side of KMV, but not a whole ton of upfront burst. Malzahar, of course, ultimate not nearly as strong in burst damage. Kalista more about that sustained damage. Even Kennen, you know, the ultimate doesn't tick for a whole ton over a period of time. So there just doesn't seem to be enough CC to chain where you can really stop the Tahm Kench from saving someone, from resetting the fight, from backing out. And additionally, the cast coming in from Kire just makes it so difficult for Element to really find his way into the backline.
Well, I mean, the thing for KMV is they have haven't even attempted to focus the Tahm Kench once. He's the one that's been sitting on the backline waiting for one of the damage dealers of DP to be targeted, and then he's just coming in, gobbling them up and getting them to safety. And now that DP have so much control of the map, they've taken so many turrets, they've taken so much vision, and because they have a Casio, they just freely walk up and they get themselves a 22-minute Baron. This play from Dark Passage is just very clean and very effective.
Yeah, started out slow for about the first 10 minutes, but then turned on the switch, and they've been going ever since. 3-10 the kill score, and you can see the massive goal differences between the lane. 3K just in the mid lane. And I mean, it does not get easier from here, especially as they're going to start to pick up these inner towers. You can see Echo pushing on the bottom as well. KMV doing their best to force a fight, but you can see an act of desperation. Bear tries to taxi his way into the backline, but gets off a little bit more than shoot. Element jumps forward, but there's no team with him. He's all alone, and he just gets popped in an instant. Tahm Kench now delivering to the front lines. They're trying to lock down Elwin. They will get him. They trade it back, but Rogu is here. Kire suddenly in the middle of the team. Bear doing his best. KMV, they're trying to get something back, but it is simply not enough. They will grab the Gragas, but how much is it worth as KOSQ runs forward? Quick ult as the Kalista tries to throw out the auto, grabs another kill. KOSQ on a rampage through this team as he just cuts down member after member. The triple kill coming through.
So a little bit of a messy fight, but Dark Passage is still the team to come out on top. They have the Baron buff as well. They're going to break into the base of KMV. They're going to pick themselves up an inhibitor. The death times are still relatively low, so the smart play for Dark Passage is to now back away. There's no need to continue forcing it. They have so many options now that inhibitor is gone. And, I mean, what a play. You're just really seeing the difference in itemization right now. Kennen did a great job of getting onto the backline, but he was there by himself. The exhaust came out from Rogu to mitigate a lot of the damage. And then the flash as well from Ashe to create a gap after the Kennen had used all of his gap closers. Meant that Zeitnot was just easily able to shred that Yolo to bits.
And unfortunately, this is just the position that KMV are in. As we watch this one more time, you can see the desperation here. They're trying to make a play. They're trying to find a fight, but the team just not on the same page, unfortunately. The CC does not chain together, and it's just one at a time into the back line, and KOSQ has no problem burning him down.
Elwin did get collapsed on, which was a good setup from KMV, but it was fine because you're just buying enough time for the rest of DP to come in for the collapse. At this point, KMV felt confident that, hey, we can just disengage. They're not going to dive. No, honestly, guys, they're not going to dive. Oh, no. KOSQ's just way too bad. He easily shreds through the turret.
Solid insight into the comms there, Vedius.
Why does this snake bite so hard?
I mean, it's a rough story, too. The Mountain Dragons, they're pretty much getting everything that they could want as a scaling team. And really for KMV, I think it's not entirely a lost cause, but there's, short of DP really making a mistake, there's not a whole lot of opportunities for to come back. And they really have to start to think about what they're going to be doing in their future matchups, because clearly these picks that worked so well for them, maybe finding an opportunity here, though. Just swallowed up. In goes Kire, breaks up the team. Julio Cito now set to fall. The fight continues. Bear getting pulled back. Fox looking for a way in. Does use the cleanse. Bear pulled in. Rogu on the backside. He doesn't bring anyone else with him. He's knocked into the team, but it's the double kill for KOSQ. He's looking to make it a triple. Tries to get more. Gets locked up. Looking maybe for the quadra. The kills just keep coming in. Gragas takes one away. DP, one final chance to cut down KMV, and they're looking to close the game.
Great final fight for DP, utilizing the massive gold lead that they have to close out that final team fight. KMV just tried to find every opportunity they could, but it just was not enough.
No, and they're going to close it out here in one final instant, but that's all it's going to take. Dark Passage putting on a clinic to shut this team down, and KMV a very rough first day here in the group stage.
Well, we wondered how the synergy would be with KOSQ and Kire in a lineup that they don't have much experience with. Looks alright to me. Looks okay.
Looks KOSQ, to be fair, and I mean really across the board, it feels like maybe there's something that they could change in pick bans, but they were outclassed in the laning phase. And
oh yeah.
KOSQ, we didn't even see much synergy in the early game. That man just got a 30 farm lead in the lane phase.
A lot of this was a result of KMV's draft that made it very easy for Dark Passage to build themselves up the leads that they did, because you had a winning matchup in mid, you had a winning matchup in bot, but for KMV, they had the winning or they had the stronger jungler in the early game, they had the stronger top laner. All they needed to do was concentrate their efforts into the top half of the map, snowball this Kennen into succeeding, and then you can set up all sorts of plays around the map with that Kennen. You can go on a roaming duo lane with the Nidalee, looking for opportunities in the mid lane on the low mobility Cassiopeia. Remember, she can't even buy boots. Or you can go to the bottom half of the map where you have a very easy engage with the Fate's Call with the Headbutt Pulverize, and you could quickly shut down that target.
But the issue that we saw there is that there were some attempts to move into the bottom lane, but the Tahm Kench just made it so difficult. And almost obscenely tanky champion in the early game. And you can see as we run through the first blood here, the passive play coming in for KMV in the early game just set DP up for success as their scaling picks continued to get ahead, and this one fight where Alistair found the engage simply was not enough.
No, it certainly was not. It was just a matter of a lot of these fights were a result of the Jarvan effect, where you have Jarvan going in, EQ, flash, R, gets onto the backline, and he turns around and he's like, team, I've got the AD carry. And then you realize, team? Anyone here? And it's because you've created such a massive gap that it's so difficult for the rest of your team to follow up on. And in this situation, the focus was on to the front line, and it's another instance.
And this is the thing you see, yeah. Kennen dashing forward, uses his E, leaps into the backline, ults, but he's the only one who's been able to make it that far. Alistair has already burned all his CC, already ran in. Just not finding the opportunity. So it felt like there were some opportunities for KMV. They just need to sort out a little bit in their pick ban and a little bit on their execution here, because Dark Passage just seemed to be one step ahead at every stage of the game.
I do want to give praise to Dark Passage for being able to capitalize on the advantages that they had. Mad props to the bottom lane as well. Multiple times they were able to turn a lot of 2 versus 3 scenarios in their favor. And overall, just the play coming out from Rogu to keep these primary targets alive with the consume was just very impressive. His positioning was always very good. If he was on the front line, he was soaking up damage and getting down the important CC. But if he was on the back line, he was always there providing utility, getting good exhaust down. And it was just a very impressive performance from really all the members from DP. But we will have to see how they perform in later teams, because I feel like KMV just made it easier for DP to succeed.
At the end of the day, I think that it was simply a matter of once that pick ban had gone through, once we saw the power of this Tahm Kench, you could see KMV really struggling to adapt, and maybe that's the difference in regional meta there. But at the end of the day, Dark Passage also just showing that they were a little bit more experienced with some of these picks and a little bit better in terms of individual laning prowess. It was a real struggle there, but I think still opportunities for Chaos Latin gamers to adapt a bit of their strategy, maybe make up for some of those deficits that we saw in the early laning phase by shifting their jungle pressure or adapting their draft.
And these are things that they're going to have to pay attention to, because they're starting day 1 at 0-2. That's not really the way you want to kick things off when you're trying to compete at a spot at Worlds. You're already displaying very strong signs of weakness, and you have a very short space of time to be able to turn these issues around. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board very quickly and rectify these issues as soon as they can.
Well, curious to see exactly what they are going to do, but we're going to toss it to a quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen.